Thanks, Walt. I remember the day I met Craig. We had a little issue at school. We were trying to figure out what was the best model for a school councilman, because when you have particularly middle school kids, you really need a go-to person when things go a little south. And at that point, where is that fine young gentleman? The young gentleman who's messing with the machine back there was how old, Craig? 3. And he was in the admissions pipeline at St. Anne's. And I said, you know, I remember reading through somebody's file that there was a dad who was in this kind of counseling business. And I knew he was working in another school. I said, let's invite him over. We'll talk about the model that we should be using at St. Anne's. And we need to hire him fast before this young gentleman becomes a student, because we didn't hire present parents. And all this happened very fast. We brought him in, and we were just looking for advice. And after he left the meeting, we all looked at each other and said, why wouldn't we hire this man? And we did. And that was a number of years ago. You can read in Craig's bio all his degrees, whether it's divinity school, all the training he has. But I think for a dad that had 4 sons go through middle school, I could have read about it books, and I could have educated myself, and I've gotten lots of different opinions about what I should do with my kids in a big sense. What Craig brings to the table, which I think is truly incredible, is just good old-fashioned common sense. When your child is doing something that's driving you absolutely crazy, whether you're a teacher or a parent or working with these kids in any way, you want to leave 30 minutes with an expert with 3 good, concrete things to do. You don't want theory, you want action items. Craig is amazingly good at that. I really appreciate you being here, Craig. I know he'll give you lots of things to think about, but I really, I remember that day well, and it served us well as a school, and appreciate you being here for saying all this. As our kids go into middle school, we need good folks like this to steer us on the right path. So, Craig, thanks very much.
I won't walk away because I want to tell a story about you. So I remember that day yesterday, and when I went to talk with him, Rose Kelly was our admissions director, she's now passed, but she said, you know, we can't hire you if we take your son. So I didn't even think I could be a candidate for the job. I wanted to explain what I do at another school. And I was waiting for my son. He was in preschool visitation. I'm a nervous dad, waiting in the library. Ramsey comes in, he says, we were thinking, why don't we just hire you? And I said, well, I thought you couldn't hire me if my son was here. And he said, well, if we hire you first, then your son can come here. If we take him first, we can't be hired. He said, so if you say yes to the job, then I'll tell you yes to your son going. So in like 30 seconds, I got the greatest news as a dad and a professional, right? And then, well, so I came down here, and I've known about this school for years because Ramsey, after he left St. Anne's, really got involved here and made it happen. And it has been a mission of love. Can you hear it?
No.
Sometimes I hear it, sometimes I don't. We have a lobber over. You want to check? Wait a minute before you leave. So, I came down to visit the school this fall. Ramsey is an excellent fundraiser. He's amazing. And I came down to see the school, and I pulled up, and I was like, this is the cutest place I've ever seen. Did you all see the outside of the school? It's amazing. You feel like this is like right out of Vermont or something, right? So I came in, got the tour from Ramsey, just total feel good. And 30 minutes later, I walked out saying, I'd be happy to do the talk for you. And I'm going to give you money, too. So, here's your check. I told you what.
Let's keep talking.
I'm like, wow, he did it to me again. Thank you, got the money, too. Thank you very much. Now, a couple more thoughts down memory lane. Is it better now? Can you hear it? Okay, I'll try to really project. So my son Alex here started at St. Anne's preschool, K through 8. All those years, every morning, when I drop him off, guess who was there to shake his hand and say hi? Mr. Stabler, right? Now think about the emotional impact that has on a younger child, as well as the elementary age child, and most especially the middle school student. To have that structure, that consistency, that people know you, right? The other, he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but In 6th grade, Alex moved into St. Anne's Middle School. He had a teacher, Mr. Dicker. Now, he had Mrs. Dicker in 2nd grade. And then he got her husband for math, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. 6th grade, he was terrified of Mr. Dicker. Really struggled. 7th grade, I saw him bring him up to a student level. Started to be a disciplined student. By 8th grade, they were joking around and best buddies. Now, 3 years later, when he got to the National Honor Society, they told him he could invite one person to come. Guess who he invited? Mr. Dicker, right? So right out of his middle school experience, he could see how that affected and changed the trajectory of his life. And that middle school period, as we have the introductory paragraph here, and I'm going to read something to you shortly, it's an incredibly vulnerable time for middle school students. And we're going to talk about their brain development, what's going on in their brains, why it makes it so complicated or so difficult at times, but it's also incredibly enriching and incredibly fun. You can always tell a good middle school teacher because they actually like all that energy, right? Most adults, when you're around middle school guys especially, how are you feeling? Oh, like, please stop, right? The moms that never had brothers, any of you moms out there who have a boy that never had a brother, you're toast. Because it's so foreign. You're like, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? And the kids are like, this is great, we're having fun, right? And then when they do something, make some mistake, what do they say? It was an accident, right? And you're abhorred by it all. Good middle school teachers love it. They love the energy, the excitement of that middle school brain. So we're going to turn and look at that tonight. We're going to look at the brain. I like to study the brain and have a brain-based curriculum I've developed. It helps inform us as educators, helps inform you as parents. Most importantly, what I find for myself is it helps me be patient. If I can understand why someone is doing what they're doing, I'm much more patient. I can just go, okay, our little president, our frontal lobe's not working right now. I get it. I understand that. Right? We are now raising a little 7-year-old girl. We just are adopting a 7-year-old girl. So we're going through this whole process all over again. She's in most precious blood, the little Catholic school in Colorado Boulevard. And we're doing that whole thing all over again. But it helps me to be a lot more patient. This part is short, that middle school brain, middle school life. There's all these changes. So if you think back to your own middle school experiences, there's academic changes, new challenges. In English class, they start talking about symbolism, right? Where they say, like, in the story, the teacher, 6th grade teacher says, what does the flower represent in the story? Now, what are the girls writing about? Beauty, inner flowering, right? This great stuff. Guess what me and my buddies were writing about? It's a flower. It's red, and it's a rose, and it has 2 thorns, right? We really weren't quite there. I remember 6th, 7th grade reading Animal Farm. Most of you aren't old enough to remember that book. And they told us it was about Soviet communism. And I'm like, it's a talking pig. What does that have to do with Russia? They're going to nuke us. Like the fear, right? And I'm like, what? That's a talking pig. That has nothing to do with Soviet communism. Wasn't quite ready for that. Socially, you see a lot of what is the good side of it is called subgrouping. Where the children, you know, when you're younger, the teacher says to all the children, okay, everybody get along, let's all be friends, right? The little kids, when they have their birthday parties, they typically invite who? The whole class, right? And everybody comes. Now in middle school, they start to subgroup. They've got their little groups that they start to spend more time. Could be based on their talents. They're in the same lacrosse camps or something. Could be based on their interests, their music. They differentiate, right? Now those same little subgroups, what can they become? Collects, right? It's all 6th grade, the whole year it's in 6th grade. The whole year is on social subgrouping and how to avoid cliques. We don't want cliques, right? And in that small environment, just like St. Elizabeth, you can have incredible discussions, do great social engineering. And the other big change is there's this thing called puberty, right? Do you remember that? How awkward that feels? One time in 6th grade, I do lunch clubs with the middle school kids. They can come have lunch with me. And it was Alex's grade. One of the girls in his class came in. The girls had to talk with the doctor, female doctor. The boys had to talk with me, right, in the class. The girls come in, and this one girl said, they talked about that P word. And I'm like, what? And she said, you know, P plus Enos. Is that a new vowel or something? Like Enos, I've never heard of Enos, right? But all these massive changes that you're going through just physically.
It is just an incredible time of development. Now, we'll start with the positive stuff. The teen brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, the middle school is the start of that teen brain development. That teen brain development is going to go on to about 26 for females, 28 for males, latest research. So this is the starting edge. And it's not like all of a sudden you flip the switch and all the kids in 6th grade go through puberty and all these changes at once, okay? It varies differently between boys and girls and each individual child. So this is kind of the starting phase of this adolescent brain. Now I'm going to read this next part, I'll just give it quick. So for centuries, people thought the teen brain was like an underdeveloped adult brain. It wasn't mature yet. You had your little kid brain, then it was starting to grow, and it was an immature teen brain. However, as people are looking at, well, what's the function of that adolescent brain? What purpose does it serve throughout human history and through survival? What's it supposed to do? And as you look at that, then all the stuff we talk about tonight makes total sense. It's about procreation, food acquisition, defense, and community building, living in a community with other people. For teenagers, who do they value more than anybody? Their friends, right? They have to, because 30 years from now, are their lives going to be dependent on you? No. Who are they dependent on? Their friends. They're probably going to marry someone within a couple years of their age. They'll be working with people their own age. I'll hopefully be playing golf in Arizona. And they won't be dependent on me, right? So they need to make those social connections and get ready for their generation. So when we look at it, we're going to look at impulsivity, the novel-seeking, the reward-driven frontal lobe. What I talked to the kids about, this is your president. We're going to get to that next. You look at the emotional intensity, the Romeo and Juliet emotions, and you look at that drive for social connection. Totally fits together. It actually makes perfect sense. However, is there anything in human development that's always really pretty? No. Do you remember your kids' potty training? How many of you had kids that were perfectly potty trained the first time? No. Right? It's a little messy. So is adolescent development. It can be pretty messy. Now, we'll do this exercise quick so we can get kind of warmed up on a cold night. If I asked you to think back to your childhood, see if you can think of a positive thing that happened to you. Something someone said, something someone did that made you feel great about yourself. Okay? So see if you can recall a positive. Now, tuck that on one side of your head. See if you can think of a negative. Something that made you feel alone, different than the other kids, left out, not part of the group. Okay? Just quick show of hands. How many of you got the positive? Pretty good. How many got the negative? Okay? Every time. I've done this 100 times. Almost everybody has the negative. Do those negatives really stick with you? If we spent enough time on it, I had you share, how many of you feel like you could remember exactly what it felt like? You would. You'd just go right back to that place. Now, how many of you had, we're doing a middle school talk tonight, so you probably went to middle school, but how many of you had your negative in middle school? Not too bad. Generally speaking, when I do this exercise for all audiences, teachers especially, almost everybody goes back to middle school on negative. It's a really tough time. Hopefully you have lots of positives too, but it's a very difficult period. Now, we'll talk about brain basics quickly. Your brain is about, when you start puberty, so you have 100 billion, right now we all hopefully still have 100 billion brain cells. I don't know about Ramsey and I. We might be a little less. We might have 80 billion, I don't know. But you've got basically 100 billion nerve cells in your brain. It's about 90% done when you're about 12. So the actual size of the brain, brain cells, doesn't change a whole lot during puberty. There is some growth, primarily this part of the brain is where you're going to add some more brain cells. But it's pretty much there, right? You've got, so 100 billion nerve cells. Now, the next piece of that, again, boys and girls, on average for development, girls are about 2 years ahead of boys. You go to any kindergarten classroom, when I go to teach kinder, I was in there this morning reading the kindergartners. What are most of the girls doing? Sitting still. They look like her. They're smiling. Their hair is nice. They have nice clothes on. They could have just had lunch and they still school look perfect, right? What are most of the boys doing? And twirling around, spinning, touching each other, touching the blocks, right? This is the teacher had to tell the kids. And I remember we're supposed to not be playing with the blocks today with Mr. Knippenberg. Their brains, especially this part, which we'll talk about next, the frontal lobes are about 2 years behind the girls. As you hit puberty, same thing. Brain development girls about 18 months to 2 years ahead of boys. Okay, so you see a big change. Girls first, boys are lagging along. So any of you moms out there with teenage boys, if you got a middle school boy right now and you're like wondering, when is this going to end? Usually about the middle of sophomore year. About the end of sophomore year, you'll see some maturity in your boys. And hopefully that's not too disappointing for any of you. But it's a tough deal. Now, what's really happening in the brain is what's called branching. So all those cells are there, but they have a basic sort of setup in elementary school. So the average fourth grader, can they sit for 20, 30 minutes? Yeah, they can do their projects, right? Have good friendship skills. They've got the base package. What happens to those brain cells now is they start to branch, and they start to make new connections all over the brain. Starts to make all sorts of new connections in the brain that allows the brain to access information from all different points and integrate it together when you're an adult. So think about your own life. How many different things did you think about in your day today? Everybody would yell. Lots, right? You got a lot of stuff going on in your brain all day long. Your brain is constantly integrating all these things at the speed of light. That adolescent brain is getting ready to do that. It's making new connections. It's growing all over the place. The easiest way to think about it, you know the Charlie Brown Christmas tree? Remember that little Charlie Brown tree? That's your elementary brain. Now you go to the nursery, same height, same diameter, but what's the difference with the nursery tree? It's got a whole lot more needles, right? A whole lot more branches, and that's what the brain is doing. It is branching all over the place, making new connections. Now, we're going to talk about 3 brain areas tonight that really interplay together to form your child's social relationships, their emotional relationships, how well they can stay focused in the classroom. And all 3 of those things dramatically impact learning. So as they're learning new concepts, they're doing that symbolic thinking, new math concepts, these 3 areas of the brain are going through massive changes and affect, either positively or negatively, that academic environment and their learning success and what they need as middle school students. So the first part would be what I call present or your frontal lobe function. It does things like attention, the ability to stay focused on something. Today at St. Anne's, the middle schoolers had D-Day, which is their block day, double periods. And the girl came out and she said, she looked like she had the weight of the world on her 7th grader. And she said, we just had an hour and a half of math, and now I have an hour and a half of English, right? And no PE today. Is that a lot of focused attention? You really got to be able to focus to do it for that long. So it's focused attention, organization, being able to put things away, right? Do 3-year-olds put their stuff away very well? No. Now by 3rd or 4th grade, what do you hope? They're kind of getting that down. As we get to the middle school brain, they become a lot more spacey, disorganized. I had a boy the other day who had a big fit in the car with his, or at home with his mom. He's over at one of the prep schools down south, and he was going to his locker, got some of his books out, got his PE shoes out because he had basketball practice that night, put them on top of the locker as he was getting out more books. One of his buddies come up and said, come on, man, we're all going out to play, throw a little lacrosse ball around or whatever. He grabbed his books, took off. Goes home that night, getting ready for basketball practice. Mom, where'd you put my tennis shoes? I was like, I didn't see them. I didn't have them. You must have left them in school. No, I didn't. I had them. They were in the minivan. You moved them, didn't you? Right? Big fit. Can't find the tennis shoes. Where were they? On top of that locker. The next day when he went to school, guess what he finds? There's his tennis shoes. Right? That momentary lapse of focus and organization. It's impulse control. So when you're wanting to do something, before you do it, what are you supposed to do? Stop and, what do you tell your kids all the time? Stop and think. Think about the consequences, okay? Your frontal lobe helps you stop and then start to evaluate the risk of those choices. Helps with emotional control. When I get angry, okay, I could get angry driving my car. I might want to beat the horn and put up a certain finger. What's going to happen if I do that? Chances are we could have problems on the road, right? So when you have emotions, that president stops you, helps you figure out what to do with it. It's movement control. How many of you have kids or in your class or in your family who are kind of wigglers, right? That's a frontal lobe function. It's right in the middle of this part of your brain, the movement control center of the brain. I'm a natural fidgeter myself. I always have a pen. I like to twirl pens. I love paper clips. I love to move, take apart paper clips, okay? Time management, being able to perceive time. Some kids you could say to, we're leaving in 5 minutes, honey. You got to hurry up for school. They don't have their shoes and socks on. What do they do? Okay, Mom. And they hurry along. What do other kids do? 5 minutes? Hey, I haven't seen this Lego in ages. This is great, right? And then 5 minutes goes by, and what are you doing? What are you doing? Hurry up, right? So we're going to talk about the spectrum frontal function of everybody. But it's that time management, being able to estimate time. It's working memory. When the teacher said, okay, kids, take your math books out, turn to page 12, do problem 16. As you're finding your math book, what page did I say? 12. I turned to page 12. What problem? 16. You got a good frontal lobe. Her president's working well. You got to remember that for 20, 30 seconds, right? Some kids, they might get their math book. They turn to page 16. Teacher's like, you're on the wrong page. And what's the kid say? No, I'm not. You said 16. I heard you say 16, right? They're certain they got it right. So that working memory is part of the frontal lobe function. Gating, which is the ability to knock out sounds out of your head. So right now I'm hearing the sound of this machine. I have to filter that out. I can't let that interfere with my thinking. So it's the ability to gate out other distractions. So yesterday I was teaching a 3rd grade class. Now why they do this in schools, I don't know. But guess who shows up? A maintenance guy with a snowblower. And he goes right in front of the windows, right? Now what 3rd grade boy is not going to go, ah! Even I was looking and I'm like, that's cool. They got it on the logo. That thing's gigantic, right? Now why they do that, I don't know. You don't do that here, I hope. And mowing during the day, and leaf blowers. Like, dude, Foursquare, right? So it's being able to filter those things out. Okay, those are your basic frontal lobe functions. Now, one of the most simple tests of how your child is doing at that is called the marshmallow test. Has anybody heard of it? It started in the 50s, 1950s. They're still tracking these people. They're my age. Took a group of preschoolers. The psychologist took them in a room. Said to the little 4-year-old, I got this marshmallow. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to leave the room. I'll be back in 10 minutes. And they show the kids the clock. When I come back, when I leave, you can eat it if you want. But if you can wait 10 minutes, when I come back, I'll give you 4 more. Okay? And then you'll have all of them. Okay? What do you think happened? They filmed it. And I've seen some of the clips. What do you think happened? Some of the kids, boom, just chucks it down. Before the lady even left. I feel like they're grabbing it out of her hands. Okay? That was about 1/3 of the kids. Guess what another 1/3 of the kids did? 1/3 waited the whole time and got 4 more. Then there was a middle 1/3. Guess what they tried? They tried to wait, but they couldn't. On average, there were 6-7 minutes. They just couldn't hold on. Now, there was one kid's like looking at it, pulls a chunk out, eats it, reformulates it. I'm like, and that's a Wall Street guy right there. He's got it down. He knows what he's doing. So they just couldn't help but eating it eventually, right? Now, they followed those kids 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later. They're just doing some more brain scans on them. What do you think they found between the 3 groups in terms of education, employment, family happiness, marital satisfaction? What do you think they found? The ones who could wait have much more satisfaction in their lives. The middle 1/3 were in the middle. The bottom 1/3 were not very successful. They had higher rates of incarceration, earlier death rates, health problems, all sorts of less education. Okay? Now that they're getting older, they're finding all these other side effects. That group that just chucked it down just couldn't control their impulses. In the modern world, we need to be able to control our impulses. Yes, and it's this part that does it. It's this frontal lobe that helps you put the brakes on. Now, one of the other things, this is sort of off the topic, but it's great for motivation, are helping kids handle emotions or handle temptations. When they looked at how did the kids that waited, how did they do it, guess what they found? As they were sitting there for the 10 minutes, the kids that tried to wait, the middle third, what were they looking at all the time? The marshmallow. The kids who waited, guess what they were doing? Looking out the window, doing that. They're thinking about their play dates, they're looking at a picture on the wall, they're looking at the flowers outside. They weren't thinking about the marshmallow. That's why they could wait. Does that make common sense in your own life? If you really want something, you keep thinking about it, it's going to drive you over the edge. You got to move to distract yourself. Do you have a question? Yes?
Did it matter when they developed the ability to resist impulse? So you talked about that in preschool.
Yes. So, no, they followed him. So, here's the deal. I'll show you. So, the little ones, 2-year-olds, who's the frontal lobe for a 2-year-old? Mom and dad, okay? A lot of times, middle schoolers, guess who's the frontal lobe of middle school? The teacher, right? And kids need, we're going to talk about structured environment. They need structure. They need to know rules and consequences. A lot of times, your parents, teachers, you're the frontal lobe of middle school. But the 2-year-old is not really on the scale yet. This is the last part of the brain to develop in human development. Species evolution, this is the last part of our brain to develop. As your child grows, this is the last part. The brain develops back to front. Same thing in puberty. Grows back to front. The emotional center is way down here in your brain stem. We'll talk about that next. That's one of the first signs of your kid going through puberty. Their emotions go way out. Because that's the first part to start to get activated. This part is last. Okay? Now, so they're off the chart. They move up. Girls, this should be on your handout. Average female is about the 80th percentile. So if you did the bell curve, it's the norm for girls. By about kindergarten, they're in the 80th percentile. Preschool, kindergarten for girls. Boys, as they get another year or two along, I'm looking at second grade, is sort of the year that I want to see the boys on this, and the boys are going to be about the 50th percentile. That's also true for men and women. So if you did the test for lobe functioning, for men, most of us guys are about the 15th percentile, and most of the women are about 80th percentile. Okay? So if you, any of you are married, when you watch TV and you put on some movie, what do? Watch it. When a guy's watching TV, what's he doing? Right? He's bouncing from one show to the next, right? We are much more less focused. We also tend to have more impulse control. If you think about survival, so I was just teaching this to fourth graders, and at St. Anne's, we're an Episcopal school, so I can talk to the kids about why did God design us this way? Why are we this way? So what ancient people, Israelites, what were the teen boys learning to do? Throw spears, hunt, look around, right? If you're out hunting, do you want to get distracted by movement? Yes. You want to get distracted by sound, movement, anything to see that animal. You go get it. If women are getting food, what are they doing? Collecting. What are they collecting? Little berries. If you're collecting blueberries, Alex and I were in Alaska a couple years ago and found wild blueberries everywhere. To collect those little blueberries, what do you need to do? Focus. Do you need to be focused? Yes. If you just go stomping through the blueberries, what do you have? Juice, right? You need to be focused. Women's vision, by the way, does color better. Women notice details better than men. Our vision, and we notice color better. Women notice color better. Men's visual system is activated by movement. Men tend to notice movement, okay? So it made sense to have half of our species be more distracted, 50th percentile. I like to tell the story. So the rabbi, he's got the tribe of Israel, they're all around the fireplace. The rabbi's telling the story. People are listening, weaving baskets. If everybody's totally focused on the rabbi, what's going to happen is, middle of the night, a tiger is going to, wild animals going to sneak up on us. And then I'm going to turn to my buddy Ramsey and go, that's a great story, buddy Ramsey. And where's Ramsey? He's gone. He's just got drug off by the tiger, okay? Because all of us are doing what? Paying attention to the rabbi. Now, if some of us are distracted, and I hear a noise in the bush, and I grab my spear and I throw it in the bush, could I be the hero of the tribe? Yes, I could be the big hero. I just saved us. Now, I could have also hit my friend Ramsey, who was going to pee. And then it's like, bummer, I should have thought about that. Okay? So most of your middle school boys, they're thinking, I'm going to be the big hero by doing this. Most of the time they're not. Okay? But, so survival, it makes sense. Now, during puberty, as this thing starts to grow, everybody slides down. So girls are heading down here. It drops to about half. Frontal lobe function drops to about half. Okay? So the girls slide down. They don't have space control. The boys slide down even further. Okay? Does that make sense? So that's all people. Then, as the brain grows, by 26 for girls are going to be about the 80th percentile. Guys are going to be about the 50th. Okay? So everybody slides down during adolescence. Then they slide back up. And that frontal lobe, as an adult, will be what you have. This incredible thing that can balance all sorts of thoughts, juggle things, and it will speed up. It will get over 100 times faster. So your brain, the transfer of information between brain cells speeds up by 100 times. And it's called the process of myelination, which is a coating that goes over the brain cells and allows the electrical activity to just fly through our brains. But during that development time, everybody slides down. Does that make sense? Now, from just a diagnostic standpoint, if you're the bottom 6th to 8th percentile, if you took the test, you're a 3rd or 4th grade kid, you scored about the bottom 6th to 8th percentile, who knows what that's called? ADHD. Okay? So if you're about the bottom 6 to 8%, you've got ADHD. Now for ADHD kids, they slide down too. Okay? ADHD teenagers have 300 times the accidental death rate of other kids. They really do things without thinking. The ball goes across the street, kickball, what do? Run out to get the ball. Do they look both ways? No. Ball goes to the roof, they're on the roof. They're driving the car. Buddy says, look at that hot babe over there. What do? They look at the hot babe, probably say how, and they run off the road, right? So they've got 4 times the accidents, car accidents, right? So they really suffer as everybody moves down. Now the other reason that we all move down, I want to talk to you about, so you have your brain cells. Her and I, what's your name? Bridget. We're gonna be brain cells, okay? So stick your arm out. These are called, this is an axiom. My arm is called an axiom. These are called dendrites. She's got dendrites. And I'm going to send a little message to her to pay attention to the speaker, okay? And I'll tell, you're another part of my brain. You're thinking about Parenthood, the show. Is that still on? You're thinking about the Oscars. You're thinking about the Oscars and I don't know, one of those actors. Now, these are both part of my brains. I'm going to tell her to do what? Stop thinking about the Oscars. I'm going to tell her to do what? Pay attention to the speaker. Now, the way I communicate, a little electrical impulse goes through me, gets to the end of my dendrite, it sends a little chemical messenger, like a letter, over to her, and it says, stop, turn off, you turn off. It sends another one over to her. When it touches, it says, you turn on. Okay, that's basically how your brain works. The little letters that go back and forth, the main player in your phone, there's 300 different letters in our brains. We have 300 different chemicals that communicate signals, okay? The big one in the frontal lobe is something called dopamine. Dopamine is the big player in the frontal lobe. Adolescents have about half the levels of dopamine as adults and kids. So during adolescence, your dopamine levels fall about half. So if earlier I was able to say, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, and now I've got, pay attention. Which one's probably going to win out? Her or the Oscars? The Oscars are going to probably win out. The Oscars are more stimulating. If something's interesting to us, guess what happens to our attention? It goes up, right? So parents, constant frustration. When he's playing video games, he's paying attention. He can pay attention to those Legos for hours. When he's doing his homework, he can't stay focused, right? Well, are Legos a lot more exciting than homework? Yes. Now, what you're wanting out of a good middle school is creative teachers who are introducing new concepts, new hands-on learning. I know I talked to Rams about their after-school program, multi-sensory program, all sorts of activities for kids. They need that novelty. They need stimulation. If they get bored, guess what happens to this? It shuts down. Okay? Did I just? Is that outside or is that the mic? Oh, I didn't gate out the truck. That's a truck. Okay? So those dopamine levels drop during adolescence. We will at the end talk about different things that can raise your dopamine levels to help your kid out. We'll also talk about things that make it too high. And then you've got other side effects. But that's your basic presidential functioning. So that's going on during this time. I always ask the 7th graders, I do a brain move, the curriculum for 7th graders is all in their brain during adolescence. And I ask them, how many of you in the last year or two have done something really stupid? And even you thought it was stupid, okay? And you get the hands up, right? One boy, one class, probably, I'll tell you who it was afterwards. He had one of those Rockies baseball bats. You know, you get the baseball games about this long, they got a pen in it. And he's sitting there and he's got this bat and he's going like this. He's like pulling it back and letting it go, right? And just as I said, teenagers do a lot of stupid stuff. He flicks this and hits him in the head. And he looks at me like with shock and awe that it happened. And I'm like, Connor, what did you expect to happen, buddy? And he's like, it was an accident. And I'm like, no, it was a failure of you to think about the consequences of your behavior, right? It would make logical sense. That's going to happen. Now I tell the story of the girls out in Parker. It was just a couple years ago, 7th grade girls at a slumber party. They thought it'd be fun to take some sexy photos of each other. They ended up taking some topless photos of each other. They thought it'd be fun to send it to one of the boys, the popular boys. Remember the story? That popular boy then really didn't use his present. What did he do with it? Forwarded it to his buddies. Okay? What did he get charged with? Distribution of child pornography. Okay? Girls got in trouble. He got more trouble because he sent it on to other people. Should they have been doing it? No. Now, does the 7th grader think about long-term consequences? Not very often. There are a few. They're usually girls who in 7th grade are already thinking about doing their homework tonight so they can prepare to go to Stanford. Okay? For the average 7th grade guy, what are they thinking about? Lunch. Right? They're really not thinking about how I'm going to get ahead of life. They're pretty moment-to-moment creatures, and it's because of that frontal lobe sliding down. I want to turn to the next area of the brain. Any questions just on frontal lobe function? We'll come back to it too. Yes?
I have a question about the marshmallow experiment.
Yes.
Do you think they did that same experiment the way our kids are supposed to
Oh.
develop electronics?
Yeah.
What's the influence of that? I look at all those things. I have an 8.5-year-old, so I'm trying to get the advanced organizer for what's ahead. And I'm looking at all those things trying to make the connection.
Yeah.
The global electronics.
We have I have a whole section. Yeah. We're going to talk about electronics and what it does to dopamine levels and one of your parental strategies. I'll just give you a hint. Limit it as much as possible. It's really not that great for your brain. So the video games, right? The action-packed stuff. I walked out of my office today, too. The kids are waiting to see me. They're playing shotgun something. I'm like, oh, God. You know? So it's really not good. And we'll get to why.
Including the delayed gratification.
That's the problem. It's all instantaneous. Is modern life more instantaneous already? Yes, we want everything now. I mean, think about McDonald's. When I was a kid, what did you have? You had the burger, right? Then they got the Happy Meal. So now what are we telling kids about eating? Is food good enough anymore? No, you gotta be happy. You gotta have a play later. Then, when this isn't big enough, what do? Supersize it, right? So now we got to have everything bigger. We got to have it fast. We got to get it to us right away, and we got to all be happy. Okay? We're a pretty impulsive culture overall. Today, did anyone listen to NPR about family dinners today? They had a little segment on the loss of the family dinner time, right? That nobody has the Norman Rockwell family meals anymore. Everybody's going in different directions, and if you are home together, the one lady was talking. She said, "Well, my dad's in there watching TV, and my husband's checking the Facebook at the dinner table, okay? And the TV's blaring, right? Is that really intimacy? No, not the end. Did you listen to the story? She was trying to make some point that maybe this is just a new way of interacting. I'm kind of like, oh man, I don't know. She did talk about reading with the kids later in night. That's good. But we need to slow down as a family. And that's at the end too. Any other questions on the frontal lobe? Yes?
Is there any way, particularly with ADHD kids, of helping them develop their executive function?
Yes. So two ways, so this is all kids, okay? The first one, so everybody, to improve executive function for anybody, it's called external structure. So wherever you are on that scale, if you're not very high up internally, you need it externally. Those are called lists. How many of you do lists? Make lists of what you need. How many of you have a place for your keys every day? Is that a good thing? If you didn't have a place for your keys, what would happen every morning? You'd be late, run around screaming, all upset, right? You got a place for your purse, your wallet. It's practicing good habits, right? Doing behavior charts. With our little 7-year-old, we've got the little sticker chart for home every morning. Make the bed, do the hair, put your PJs away, right? Nighttime, it's brush your teeth, put your clothes in the hamper. She gets stickers for that. She earned 240, and we went to Build-A-Bear last week. And she got, that was a big reward. It was a quarter per sticker. And at 240, you cover the basics at Build-A-Bear. We're not talking elaborate stuff. That's just the basics. I'm like, good golly, that's incredible. She's got that at school. In first grade, she has a little sticker chart at school. And her allowance is now being based on her stickers at school. So the little kids do little sticker charts. They need to have habits and routines. That's how you move it up. Okay? You can have rewards. Can you also have consequences? Yes. Right? Your kid forgets their lunch again. Does that mean you need to drive it up to the school? No. Okay? They can figure it out. Right? Or if you do drive it up to the school, what does that kid owe you? 30 minutes of time, or $3 for gas, or 30 minutes of chores for your time schlepping their lunch up to it. Okay? So when you bail kids out too much, why would they need to use it? If they're going to get rescued all the time, why should I make myself use it? Now the other trick is, the more you think about using your president, guess what? The better it works. So they did research with kids. These were kids with ADHD. They set a little timer. Every minute would go off, and the kid just checked, was I paying attention to my material? And just by thinking about paying attention, their frontal functioning went up. Okay? I'm constantly saying, let's stay focused. Use your president now. Okay, everybody using their president? Are we focused right now? I do little stickers for kids on their desk, like a picture of an eyeball. So every time they see it, what's it supposed to remind them? Think about it, an eyeball. Look at the teacher or look at your book. Okay? For the impulsive kids who blurt out, it might have a little picture of a hand, a raised hand. Every time they see that, what's supposed to remind them? Raise your hand, don't blurt out, right? I got a little signature chart, one of the second graders at St. Anne's. He's earning some stickers too for wherever he wants to go. And part of it's for raising his hand. If he raises his hand, the teacher comes over and puts her initials up there. There's a Dicker effect that's helping him out with learning to have a little more self-control. Now, if you have a child who's ADHD, and they are very far down on the scale, they really are struggling academically, they really are at a risk for injuring themselves horribly, then the other way to do it is with medication. So your Ritalin, there's a bunch of new ones that work much better than Ritalin. Vyvanse, Strattera, Dextrine, Concerta. Vyvanse is one of the newer ones. It works about 13 hours. It's in a patch. Those increase your dopamine levels. They get them to about a normal range. Okay? So what you don't want, if you think of your dopamine levels, you don't want them too low. If they're too low, your frontal lobe doesn't work. You want to get them in a sweet spot. Okay? About mid-range. If you can get them in that range, you can do all those things. For adults, every morning, guess what we like to drink that spikes our dopamine levels up? Coffee. Caffeine bumps up your dopamine levels about 4 times. Problem with caffeine, what happens after an hour or so? Wears off. You got to do more. Exercise will bump up your dopamine levels about 4 times, and it lasts really long. Good teachers for years have known. They have recess every day, they have PE every day. If you're in the middle of the afternoon, your 4th graders are struggling, you can just say, hey kids, go take a lap. They run around, they come back, they pay better attention, right? So it's exercise is going to boost that. If your dopamine levels get too high, then there's only one function that works, which is focus, and it becomes hyper-focus, where you can't do anything else. You're just stuck on that one thing. Now guess what increases your dopamine levels 16 times? She said, we'll just do it on video games. Excitement. When you play the exciting video games, your dopamine levels spike 16 times. So have you ever noticed when your kid looks at the TV or plays video games, it like sucks out their frontal lobe? And they're like zombies staring at it.
okay? I was on a radio program this morning, and the interviewer said, when my seventh grader looks at the screen, I think he just lost his brain. I'm like, pretty much, right? It just sucks it right out. Now, when the kid gets off the video games, guess what happens to your dopamine levels? They plummet, absolutely drop, below the range you want, or even lower. And guess how they act? Part of this does emotional control. When the kid's finished playing his video games for 2 hours, you tell him he's got to turn it off, how do they act? Grumpy, crabby, irritable. Guess what wonderful substance also increases your dopamine levels 16 times, and we're known for it in Colorado? It's a hint. Marijuana. Marijuana spikes your dopamine levels 16 times. Okay? So guys, back in Indiana, we had Jay's potato chips. Out here they have Lay's potato chips. 16 times the dopamine will get guys after they smoke pot sitting there in the room going, Jay's, Lay's. How did the J turn into an L? It must be a conspiracy. Let's eat some more. Okay? So that spikes it really high. When pot wears off, how do people act? Irritable and grumpy, right? It's just this tremendous spike in dopamine levels. Later on, we'll talk about how that affects your learning, which is not very good. Okay? So for kids with ADHD, you really need medication. It is very effective. It gets them in that sweet spot. It gets you right in the sweet spot. Okay? We'll talk about nutrition later. Okay. How are we doing on time? I get till like 10 o'clock, right? Well, 8. I got another hour. Cool. Okay. Our emotional system. That's down here. You have your automatic brain stem right up here at the top of your neck. That does your breathing, your heart rate, body temperature, all the things that are automatic. Does every living animal have to have a brain stem? Yes. Okay? So that you have to have that. There's a great story I tell the kids. Have you ever heard of the headless chicken in Colorado? It was down in southern Colorado, Memphis, I think. Nick the headless chicken, I think was his name. Farmer, 1930s. Farmer went out to cut off the chicken's head for chicken dinner. His mom said, I like lots of neck. The farmer took the axe, cut the chicken's head off, dropped the chicken, head plops down, blood spurts out, all of a sudden it stops bleeding. Chicken starts running around, goes back to pecking. Farmer's like, whoa, this is a trip. Takes the chicken inside, starts putting corn down his throat, gives it an eye droppers full of water, keeps it alive. Starts taking it to circus acts, and he's got the head in formaldehyde. Charges like a nickel for the farmers to come see his headless chicken. This is a true story in Colorado. Okay? Some big time promoter comes by, sees it, wants to take Nick on the road, takes Nick across the ocean, goes to London, Paris, New York, San Francisco, comes back 3 years later with the chicken, gives it back to the farmer with enough money for the farmer to buy a brand new truck. Okay? He's a happy guy. Unfortunately, a couple months later, the farmer put in too big of a piece of corn, and the chicken choked to death. Okay? Now, who can tell me, how did that chicken live? What did it still have? That automatic brain? The mom wanted an extra neck, right? So he cut off the head way up here, and it left that automatic brain. But they think the reason it didn't bleed to death, it was down in southern Colorado in the summer. The axe head was out in the sun, metal axe head. And they do that and cauterized it. They think it probably cauterized the veins, that kept it from bleeding to death. And it lived for 3.5 years. Isn't that cool? So we all have to have an automatic brain. Surrounding that for higher level species, most animals that we think of as warm-blooded animals, there's a few reptiles, have emotional systems. There are some reptiles that don't have emotional systems. When snakes come back to their new babies and the mommy snake finds them, what does she think? Lunch, right? Is she bonding with her snakes? No, okay? Higher form animals, do dogs. We got a dog that's going to breed. Is she going to form a loving relationship with her puppies? Yes. Dogs have incredible emotional systems. Elephants are known to have incredible emotional systems. Dolphins have big emotional systems. So this part of the brain wraps around that automatic brain. It's called your limbic system. And that's where our fear comes from, our anger, our frustration, our love, our joy, our happiness, our jealousy. All our emotions come from this section of the brain. Now, on the next slide, you have your child's basic temperament. So all kids come with sort of a preset of how they react to life. Okay? So I made up a riddle for the 4th grade. And this is the artist rendering it. So the story is that
The Winnie the Pooh characters want to go for a walk in the forest. And Winnie the Pooh starts up. Now, is Winnie the Pooh pretty happy? Yeah, the kids tell me he's about an 8 on happiness. He's about an 8. So Pooh starts up. He falls over a rock. What does he say? Oh, bother. And then he looks up and he says, but there's honey in the tree. And he gets up and he keeps walking, and how does he feel? Happy. Some of you, how many of you have Pooh for a kid? Who doesn't get rattled by life? He's just happy, right? Something happens, little reaction. Okay? Piglet goes for a walk in the forest. Piglet trips over the rock. What's he feel? Worried. And he says, I gotta go home. There's gonna be more rocks. I'll fall down, I'll get hurt. I better go home. And he scurries back home. Anxious the whole time. Can't even do his walk. Okay? He has an anxiety disorder. He gets too worried. Now, one of the kids told me once, he said, Mr. Knippenberg, if you were pink and 4 inches tall and you blew away in the wind, you'd be worried too. Like, I guess I would. You know, that's true. So, some of your kids, you've got, they should say worry warts. Any of you got a worry wart? You know, the anxious child, right? Did you see you're worried? Rabbit. Rabbit's happy when he's by himself, his garden is immaculate, and his house is in perfect order. He's a bit OCD, okay? Now, if Tigger comes bouncing along, so if Rabbit went on the rock, let's do Rabbit. Rabbit falls over the rock. What's he feel? Pissed. He is angry. And he kicks the rock. Stupid rock, I hate you. And the rest of the walk, every time he sees a rock, what's he feel? Anger. I hate rocks. Throws him the whole trip. Okay? Finally, when he's back home hours later, he's relaxed. Okay? How many have an angry kid? The quick temper. The Irishman, right? Little Irishman. Okay? Eeyore, he already has melancholy. He's always sort of sad, right? So Eeyore goes for a walk. He trips over the rock, and he says, even the rocks don't want to be my friend. And he goes on, and he sees another rock, and he says, there's another rock that doesn't want to be my friend. Right? He can't get over his sadness. He is quick to feel sad. Some kids are quicker to feel sad. Now Tigger, he's a 10. If Tigger falls over the rock, what does he say? That was great! I'm going to do it again! And the whole night, he just keeps going over the rock over and over until he's all bloodied and he goes home and thinks, this was the best day of my life. This was incredible, right? He's just full of excitement. How many of you have some exciting kids at home? They just come up, they wake up in the morning, our little Lily is beaming when she wakes up. She is ready for the day. She's like our puppy. Our puppy wakes up, she comes running over the bed, starts calling us. She's happy to be alive. She's excited, right? So each of your kids and your students or your teacher, they have basic sort of temper. Some kids get rocked more. It takes them longer to recover than other kids. Does that make sense? Now, part of your emotional system, some do this, how's your defense? I teach the kids about basketball. So do preschoolers have a lot of emotion? They have very active emotional systems. So when you got the little 3-year-old with the Safeway, mommy says no cookie, what happens? Big fit, right? We're crying. Okay? So I want you to think about it here. Coming down the court. We'll do Nuggets basketball. Coming down the court. There's 4, I was going to say Lakers, but they're terrible this year. Who should I use? I don't even know who's good. 4 Nuggets. They're coming down the court with the ball on a fast break. Guess in the brain, who's supposed to stop those motions? This part, right? Your president is supposed to send out some players to stop. Do 3-year-olds have mustard in the president? No. So it's like 4 players coming down the court, big guys, and there's one little guy, Bob, trying to stop him. Okay? Who's going to score? The emotions. They have a fit. Now, as we get to 1st and 2nd grade, kids' emotions will drop at about half. So you'll see a calming of their emotional system. The kids have phrases for this. So they'll say, a little kindergarten girl this morning, she said, my brother calls me a crybaby when I cry. Okay? Because he's in 2nd grade, what's he thinking? Well, you're supposed to control your emotions. All the 1st graders, if I pass out Starburst, I'll say, now remember kids, whatever color you get what you get. You don't throw a fit or pitch a fit, right? So little 1st graders, 2nd graders, their emotions are calming down. Now we've got 2 guys coming down the court with the ball. Do they have a little frontal lobe? Yeah, they got 2 guys back, 2 medium-sized back. Do they have a chance of stopping those emotions? Yes, right? Defense, the favors of defense, hopefully. So they stop. A lot of times they stop. Now, do elementary kids still have breakdowns? Sure, they still get tweaked out. They see a bee or something and they're hysterical, okay? Or they get their feelings hurt because they didn't get invited to the birthday party. In adolescence, guess what happens to the emotional system? It's twice as active. So now we're back to 4 players coming down the court. The frontal lobe's working half. How many we got back now? 1. So Bob's back here, and you got 4 emotions coming down the court. Yeah. Who's going to win? The emotions, right? Bob's probably not going to stop. Middle schoolers can go from happy 1 minute to just really mad the next. 30 seconds later, or 2 minutes later, guess what? They're happy again. It's constant ping-pong of emotions. How do most parents feel about it? What has happened to my child? This is just insane, right? Yes?
Is that because of the active pituitary glands?
Yes. So that's going to trigger the hormone system we're going to do next. We're going to look at your hormones, okay? The male and female hormones that are big players in this. But if you measured the emotional output, it's twice as much. And it changes really fast. So one of the things I got in 5th grade from my son's 5th grade teacher was, don't overreact to preteen emotions, early teen emotions, okay? So if your kid goes off, I don't want to do my chores, and you go right for with it, what's going to happen? You got a big mess, right? So you're just going to say, just calm down. I'll be reading the post, okay? You want to give them a little bit of space. You've got to let those emotions calm back down. They have tremendous amounts of emotions. The questions I asked for the 7th graders on this part of the lecture is, how many of you have gotten really upset at your parents, said something awful, and then felt terrible about it? Okay? This girl raised her hand. I'll tell you who it was when we're done. You'll just get a kick out of this, because she was straight A student. The nicest girl in the whole class. She was phenomenal. 12 years old. She raises her hand on my guest here. She said, a couple of months ago I got mad at my mom, and I told her I never wanted her in my life again. I ran upstairs, I got our favorite photo together from Girl Scout camp. I ripped it in half, and I put just me on the outside my door so she would know she's no longer in my life. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I have a boy. Whoa, that's intense, right? And she just tweaked, right? My sister called me when her son was 12. Her son was this football player, Division I college quarterback. You could hit the kid with a hammer and he wouldn't cry since he was like 6. When he was 12, she called me up one morning and said, Andrew's at the breakfast table bawling. I'm like, what's wrong? We're out of Wheaties. She's like, what's wrong with him? I think puberty started. I think it's there, right? So you get these intense emotional surges. Now, if you look at the actual hormonal piece, this is a very more simplified version. It's much more complicated. But for the females, the big ones are estrogen and progesterone, and they're very much tied into the cycle. So if you look at females, the first 2 weeks of their cycle, weeks 1 and 2, estrogen levels are serious high. Girls during the first 2 weeks, and women, pay attention better in class. They do better in sports. They're more focused in sports. Okay? They are super women. So we have super smart, super social, super verbal girl. Okay? She's the best she can be. Her estrogen levels are sky. Day 14, ovulation kicks in. Estrogen starts to drop. Progesterone starts to go up. My graduate student who did this, she said it's sort of like a weed killer on those flowers. Okay? So there are flowers here. Now we have the weed killer. Week 3, we're sensitive. We're less focused. Frontal lobe's not working as well. The emotions are more sensitive. Feeling down in the dumps, getting a little upset about things. You've been through this with your girls? Yeah, okay. Ramsey had 4 boys. He doesn't know what to talk about. And his wife is like the walking Buddha. She's the yoga queen. She really is. She's amazing. Now, 4th week. So we got stress and sensitivity here. Then it all falls apart. So week 4, the period for you guys, right? It's not a pleasant time. So the estrogen levels are skyrocketing. Depression kicked in, just not feeling really good, right? Don't know what I'm talking about, right? My wife came up with a 2-day rule when she does lectures for teen girls. She's on the board for Smart Girl. Have any of you heard of it? We have it at St. Anne's, wonderful program, a middle school girls empowerment program. She does a lot of lectures on this topic. She tells the girls, if it's during the last 2 weeks, and you're going to make a big decision, like whether to break up with your boyfriend or not, give it a couple days, because you may regret your decision, right? Or drop a class or something. Don't do it in the immediate moment. Give it 2 days to think about it, okay? So when you're really emotional, is our tendency to make impulsive decisions and to say things that are really hurtful, right? So she's always like, give it 2 days. Now when I did a training for dads and their middle school daughters, and I said, for you dads, I've got a 2-day rule, or 2-week rule. If you need to have a big talk with your daughter about her behavior or anything, do it during the first 2 weeks. Don't do it during the last 2 weeks. So if you're going to like change your curfew or something, don't tell her that. You're just begging for a fight. Do it during the first 2 weeks. You'll be fine. Everything will go a lot better. So a lot for the female is tied into that cycle with the estrogen and the progesterone. For the guys, again, this is very simplistic. There's 4 different, 4 main hormones that affect males. The biggest one is the testosterone. You can see from 9 to 15, there's a 9 to 15-fold increase of testosterone levels, okay? And it doesn't plummet off the end, even though on commercials now they show the guys, me and Ramsey's age, are like, I'm tired. They can't play golf. They need estrogen, or testosterone, not estrogen. They need androgen, right? It doesn't drop off that quick. For some people it does, there's medical reasons. But it tapers off and lasts quite a long time. So we're looking at 66 here. It's still pretty high, okay? Testosterone is that driving force that causes men to want to get out in the world, conquer things on the football field, and conquer things in the dance room, okay? It's a pretty primitive force. So how many of you guys, when I say you can just have those visceral feelings of either conquering or lust, know exactly what I'm talking about? I remember starting to have them in 6th grade. And I remember in 6th grade, one of my buddies said, you know, the average 6th grader thinks about sex and has a hard-on boner every 30 seconds. And I looked at him and I thought, that's about right. Maybe 20 seconds. Could be even shorter than that, okay? It's very primitive, okay? The middle school guys are really primitive, okay? It's not really attractive. So the 6th grade boys every year, we have a little talk about sexuality and all this stuff. The guys can ask me any questions. My favorite question, I'll tell you this kid too, you know. He wrote down, the question was, how many times a day is it okay to masturbate? Now, physiological males, high school males, are physiologically wired to orgasm 3 times a day, okay? Now think about ancient civilizations. Most of the guys were like shepherds, right? They're out in the wilderness, okay? How often do women come around? Not very often. A guy shows up with daughters. Do you need to start getting going? Okay, so we're thinking about survival. You need to make it happen quick, okay? Now the answer to that boy's question, he said, how many times a day? I said, well, if it doesn't interfere with your studies, if you're cleaning up after yourself, you're doing it privately, and you're not hurting it. If you're doing it so much that you have to go to the doctor, it's too much, right? It's sensitive. We don't want to do it that much. You gotta like follow those basic rules. So basic sexuality for middle school males is really basic. It's not really attractive. It's kind of gross. Okay. What's that?
Maybe that person doesn't want their name divulged.
Yeah, maybe. You're right. Well, but we're good buddies, and he knows all the kids, and I know him. Okay, I'll keep that separate. I will tell you which girl, though, is the picture. You'll love it. So that thing really is cranking for the males. I had the Mullen High School tennis coach was at a talk I was doing on this topic, and he said, you know, my biggest problem with these teen guys, he's varsity coach, he said the biggest problem I have with these guys is every time somebody serves, what do they want to do on the return? Just crush it, right? That's the impulse. The impulse is just to slam that ball. And he says, I keep trying to emphasize, tennis is a game of finesse, back and forth, setting up the other guy, then you can crush it. But his biggest challenge is to get these high school guys not to want to just crush things, okay? And that's that testosterone that's actually driving that emotional force. Okay? Now, third part of the brain, the nonverbal system. So I've been communicating to you largely verbally tonight. How else have I communicated? Facial expressions, hand gestures. I got the little pointer, I can do a green thing on somebody, right? Do this. I've got verbal communication, I've got nonverbal communication. How close I was standing to someone, reading someone's eyes. Okay? So as an example, I'll show you the eye test. This is a 6, we'll do the test. This is only a sample of 6, it was in Newsweek years ago. The test is to look at those pairs of eyes and pick what that person is feeling just by looking at their eyes. Okay? So we'll do it. I got the cheat sheet. I know the answers. This first one, A. What do you think that person's feeling? Yes. Uneasy. The answer is uneasy. Nice job. Okay. B. Over here. Confident, playful, irritated, or bored? Playful. The women up here are 2 for 2. Now they can see it better. Okay. C. Joking, flustered, convinced, or desire? Desire. 3 for 3. This is great. Okay. D. Cautious, insistent, bored, or aghast? How about this side of the room? They're like mopping up. The answer is, and a guy said it, cautious. Very good, cautious. E, despondent, relieved, shy, or excited? Despondent, okay? And the final last one, annoyed, hostile, horrified, or preoccupied? Annoyed. Close. Okay? Now, the actual test for this, so this is a test of how well you can read someone's emotions just by looking at their eyes. That's part of a nonverbal communication. The actual test is 400 questions. Okay? When you plot it on this graph, the average female will score about 80th percent. They're about the 80th percentile. Okay, so they're out of 400 questions, what is that? They're getting 320 right. Okay, they're getting a B plus. Most of our initial answers came from females. The guy over here. The average male when they do the eye test, it's about the 55th percentile. Males don't quite get it, but when you look at nonverbal processing, the average guy's about 50th percentile, average female's 80th percentile. Okay? So women will notice more. In the picture on our, so on your right hemisphere, we have these things called spindle and mirror neurons. And they have axons that are up to 3 feet long in your brain, a single brain cell with an arm that's 3 feet long. And it weaves through your brain and it collects as much information as it can. It thinks about what's being said to you. It thinks about eye contact, posture, tone of voice. It remembers the past with that person. And it tells you what to do in a moment to be a social person. So the question I like to brainstorm, we'll just brainstorm it together quick. You're a middle school student, okay? Let's say you come to a classroom and there's 40 seats, tables with two seats per table, okay? And you hear the teacher say, take a seat. And that 1 second as you're standing at the door, what do you need to think about to pick the seat and make a good social decision? What should you look for? To pick your seat, what should you look for? Friends. That's the most one usually gives. I look for a friend. Okay, that's good. What else? What do you look for?
How close you are to the front.
How close do you need to be to the front? Either to see it or to hear. If you're struggling in that class, where should you probably sit? Front. If you didn't do your homework, where do you want to sit? Back. Okay? You want to kind of be back there and hide out. If you want to cause a little silliness and shenanigans, where should you be? In the back, right? Okay, maybe over in the corner with a couple of the guys, right? Besides friends, who should you look for? Gender. Nah, we got the dating game going on. So I was thinking of enemies first. So you look for friends. Should you look at the people you want to avoid? Yeah, right? So if this guy just bullied me or picked on me the class before, do I really want to sit by him? No, he's the guy that put the pin on my chair. Okay? Now, girls, I want to make eye contact. Where do I need to sit? I love teaching teenagers about this stuff. I need to sit somewhere where I can casually look to the teacher and her gaze might connect with mine. Okay? If I'm behind her, are we going to have eye contact? No, right? Unless I'm really creepy. I'm like, excuse me, or maybe I could do that. Or I dropped my pencil. Could you pick that up for me, please? Right? So you got to think about who likes who. You need to think about who usually sits with who the popular kids are. So if these two young ladies sit together all the time, and I come in, and one of them's not Bridget's not to class yet, and the other woman's sitting there, and that seat's empty, should I sit there? No, because they always sit together. And if I sit there, what's the other person going to say? What are you doing, you loser? That's Bridget's seat. Everybody knows that. Right? I'm going to get that female nonverbal stuff. Okay? You go to any middle school classroom. What are the girls doing constantly with each other? Those looks. You ever see the eyes and the facial? They make a joke about somebody, right? And they look at their girlfriend. Right? Making fun of another kid just for the eye contact. Okay? That nonverbal processing just skyrockets during puberty. Okay? Sarcasm. How many of your kids? It starts a little bit younger. 4th grade especially. That sarcasm stuff really cranks up. As we get to middle school, what kind of jokes do they like to tell? Sex jokes, right? Everything's about sex, right? It's constant sex jokes. They're going down the halls telling all these jokes. They think they are so cool. I got a couple middle schoolers today that I thought, I think they think they could teach the sex class. They really do think that. Now, would it be accurate? No. Okay. It would have every slang term you've ever heard of. They have slang words I don't even know, right? But they really are clueless, okay? So all that nonverbal stuff really ratchets up, especially in the females, about 2 years ahead of time. Average female again, about here, that's the social butterfly. Average guy's in the middle. Your average engineering guy, where do they use? Where you're operating, okay? The Bill Gates of the world, guess where they are? If you read about him, I've never met the guy, but when you read about him, he's pretty awful. People with Asperger's, you've heard about Asperger's syndrome, it's in the news all the time. People with Asperger's, about the 3rd percentile. The core of Asperger's, there's some other features to it, is they don't read nonverbal. Very difficult for them to understand others' emotions, their emotions, and understand how to relate to others. So these are the kids in the middle school who maybe on the first day show up in a Pokemon t-shirt, okay? And it's not to make fun of Pokemon. Why are they wearing it? They really like Pokemon, okay? Now what do the other junior high kids think? Oh, loser, right? And their pants are up to here, and they sit down by the most popular girl again, right? And everybody's calling them nerd, okay? What I like to tell parents is this stage of development, they're learning how to be tomorrow's leaders, okay? They're learning how to be politicians. They're learning how to influence others. That's what nonverbal does for you. But it's sort of like taking a juggling class. In the very first class, I said, we all took a juggling class. I had this group stand up. And I said, okay, stand there together. Here's some razor sharp steak knives. Now start throwing them. What's going to happen? You're going to get cut off, or you're going to cut your friends. Okay? So can middle schoolers say really mean things to each other? They're very cutting. They're trying out their power and control strategies. Okay? Now, the guy Michael Thompson is an author, well-known author, wonderful speaker. He said, you usually see some maturity around the end of 8th grade for girls because they've said every mean thing they can to each other the previous 2 years, and they've run out of ammunition. So they just call a truce because they can't think of any other mean things to say to each other, right? Boys tend to do more of the physical stuff, right? You know, who's the tougher guy, right? Kind of intimidating. Who the cool guys, who are the weaker guys, right? But that stuff really, really ratchets up. For the females, well, all of us, nonverbal processing is sped up by estrogen. So women, we have about 80% estrogen in the hormone system. Do women do social stuff really fast? You betcha. And do they notice all the details? Yes. So I asked the kids, I said, if your moms were going to plan the next dance party, how many meetings would they have? And some kid will say, about 6 or 8. I mean, they will. And they're going to think about every kid in the class. And they're going to like figure out who's comfortable with this, who's gluten intolerant, who doesn't like strobe lights, what kind of health-free organic juice can we have. Will it be a nice party? It'll be incredible. If the dads plan the party, how many meetings are they going to have? One. And they're going to be like, they're going to joke the first half. And they're going to be like, you got a Costco membership, right? Get those chips. Kids love chips. And juice boxes. And I got a roll of crepe paper. Okay? Now, is the party going to be nearly as good as the weddings? No, we're not really thinking about most of that stuff. Okay? Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian, he said when it comes to nonverbal processing, social processing, women have an 8-lane superhighway. Men have a 2-lane country road. Okay? And it's true. Neurologically speaking, women do it really fast. The area in the middle between the two hemispheres. So again, those arms are reaching out, they're collecting as much information, and they put it together in this picture of how you should act, like a stained glass window. Okay? The corpus callosum, the middle area of the brain between the hemispheres, is twice as big in women as in men. So if we were to open up our brains right now, we looked at us guys versus women, yours is going to be about twice as big. If it's twice as big, can you get a lot more information across? Yes. The other thing for guys tend to process their emotions lower in the brain. And the term is for men a lot of times, the emotions don't really rise up to cause as great deal of concern. Women will process it in a different way. So we're lower in the brain, women are higher in the brain, and they're always thinking about all these different emotions. So if you ever turn to your husband and you say, well, I was feeling this about that, how are you feeling? And your husband says, fine. Guess what? He probably does. We process things much lower. It doesn't, a lot of times it doesn't raise up to consciousness. Okay? Now, if you think about species survival, why do we want women to be more in tune with the emotions of others? To raise the babies. Can babies talk for themselves? No, right? Our moms usually pretty adept at telling what the baby's thinking or feeling. They can tell the different cries. Okay? They get really good at that. They're caring for the young ones, they're caring for the elderly people. They need to be able to do the nonverbal stuff. Okay? Again, in the adolescent, that's going to increase. Now, here's our picture of our middle school student going to the cafeteria. I want to get us to talk about St. Elizabeth's, more on how that model fits with this brain. I went to one of the first public middle schools in the country. It was in St. Louis, Missouri. This was 1969, 1970. 3-year brain building, 3-year middle school concept. They just started. Okay, so Robert H. Square Middle School, 500 kids per class. I can remember a few times I didn't have a class with a buddy, or didn't happen to see a buddy on the way to the hallway, getting my tray, turning around my dish on hand, and what do I see? Hundreds of kids. What am I feeling right now? Oh my God, I'm terrified, right? Are some of those kids looking to have a little fun with somebody? You betcha. Okay? Does anybody want to be the victim of embarrassment? Adolescence is a 24/7 job of avoiding embarrassment. You do not want to be embarrassed in front of the other kids. This poor kid drops his tray, what's going to happen? Everybody's going to be laughing, right? Now, in that split second, he's got to figure out which group can I go sit with? Who's open to some friendships? Who's making some eye contact with me, right? Who can I go sit with? Now, when you've got 20, 40 kids in your middle school lunch, can you feel a little safer and secure with who you're going to be eating with, right? St. Anne's at the middle school, they do this thing where once a week they match the kids up with 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, and it's a sign to see just to get them out of their little groups, okay? Because otherwise they will suffer. So you're trying to mix them up. We're trying to feel comfortable with all our classmates and not be terrified as we go into the huge middle school lunchroom. Does this make sense? I love that about a small school, like what St. Elizabeth's is going to be designed. It's a place where kids can feel that security, and they don't have this stuff going on. Now, I will tell you, I'm in DPS. We have a wonderful DPS elementary school Alex could have gone to. Our daughter Lily could have gone to, our new daughter. What do you think I was worried about? That I chose St. Anne's for him, most precious blood for her. what was I thinking about? And my wife, middle school. Sending kids to a giant middle school with hundreds of kids, and the teachers don't know those kids. The kids don't know the teachers. They don't know each other. They're funneling from 8 different schools. They don't know the parents. The teachers don't know the parents. Does that seem a little off? From a brain perspective, that's not really the greatest thing for our vulnerable students. They need a secure environment where somebody like Ramsey Stanberg knows them from kindergarten through 8th grade. Does that make sense? Now, that's kind of on a pulpit. I would tell you that the main reason we don't have that in our public school system, it's too expensive. It would cost us a fortune. We'd have to spend even more on education than we are to be able to have our kids go K through 8. Okay? That's what drives it. Fortunately, the public schools got away. We got rid of open classrooms. Did any of you, are you old enough to remember open classrooms in the 70s? What a nightmare. Somebody thought, well, if we took the walls out of the 4 middle school classrooms, the kids could like feel entertained and observe each other and learn. Can you imagine what that does to your frontal lobe to be in a big room with 4 other classrooms? Imagine 4 other lectures going on right now. What would happen? They'd be all over the place. I don't know, but they got rid of that. I think they've done away with all the open classrooms. That's the thing that passed. So here's what I did. This is the analogy of the stained glass window. This is the verbal and nonverbal. Hopefully it puts it together in the perfect place to sit and makes that good choice. Now, quickly before you get the solution, we're going to put it all together. This is a diagram of teen angst. Mathematically, if we wanted to talk about teen angst, you know those movies, Breakfast Club? Great teen angst film. Molly Ringwald was probably the best teen angst actress you could ever have. She was amazing, pretty in all these films. American Pie was the most recent kind of teen angst film, okay? Mathematically, it's caused by half the frontal lobe functioning, 2 times the emotion, and increased nonverbal processing. So now we're doing the sarcasm, we want to connect with friends, we're falling in love, and we don't have very good self-control. Teenagers do understand risk, so it's long been thought they don't get risk. They don't understand the risk of something. They actually can give them a test, they can tell you what the risk of their behavior is, but guess what they weigh more heavily than the risk? The friendship, social reward of your friends thinking you're cool. So they did one study with teen guys. They'd have them at a simulator, a car simulator, and the light would turn yellow, and they wanted to see what they do. The majority of the time when they were taking it by themselves, they would stop. Then they had another teenager sit next to them while they did it, and guess what they all did? They ran through the red light. They wanted to be cool. Okay? Their buddies were saying, yeah, you can beat that train. Okay? Can trains stop real quick? No. Okay, I had a good friend in high school who was killed. We were trestle diving off a bridge. He was in the fraternity house at the University of Missouri. When the train comes, you're supposed to jump. He decided to try to run down the bridge. Can you outrun a train? He was actually stoned at the time. I was in high school, he was in college, University of Missouri. Frat rush thing, was high, drinking beer, got hit by a train. Okay? They're constantly doing really dumb stuff. And emotionally driven. Romeo and Juliet, our 8th graders just went to see it. Okay? Fabulous play. Now, if that was real life, tomorrow morning in the paper, you read about that, how did you feel? That's terrible, right? Now, what's the only thing Romeo had to do to change the outcome of that? Well, he only had to do one thing. He finds Juliet, thinks she's dead. What could he have done? Called his buddy Bob. Bob, come over, man. I need a Diet Pepsi. I'm really upset. Can we talk? Bob comes over. He and I talk. Guess what happens to Juliet? She wakes up, right? Instead, he's got to kill himself. If he had just waited, he would have been. They would have had a totally different outcome. They would have gotten married, had a couple kids, and they'd be just like everybody else. Okay? Years later, they're just like everybody else. But in that moment, they feel like that emotional relationship is the center of the universe. Okay? Emotionally, you think about that, selecting your seat. Okay? Maybe I'm the kid, I'm in a hurry, I sit down, some guy gives me the business, or the girl rejects me or something. During the rest of half of that math class, what am I thinking about? My feelings and that social situation, right? That's teen angst right there. Now, they're notorious, we'll do this this side first. Here's my little teenager swirling around in their angst, okay? Over here, these are things that initially teenagers do that make them feel great. They feel empowered and control. That ultimately cause more angst, okay? So who can think of an example? Some teenagers do it feels great when they're doing it, they feel in control. But when you find out they have no control. Think about it. Drugs and alcohol, right? Cigarettes. Driving the car fast. You feel good. Remember when you first started driving for you guys? That first time you stepped on the gas, the power you felt, right? Well, what happens when you get a ticket? What happens when you crash a car? Right? Then you've got even more. President wife Laura Bush, you know what happened to her in high school? She wrote a book about it. Driving after school, I guess, in the small town or whatever. She's chit-chatting with her friend while she's driving, having a great time. How's she feeling? Fabulous. Goes through a red stop sign. Another boy, teenager, pulls out his pickup. She broadsides him, killed the kid. She talked in her book, she wrote about how she struggled with depression in her life because she killed another student. Cyberbullying. If you read the post, I'm always collecting stories for the students, cut them out of the post, bring them in. Brought the one of the 15-year-old who was on, it's a news site, Instagram, do you know this? You send photos or something, and make comments on it. That he was upset with two girls. He posted the photos on Instagram, called them all sorts of sexually derogatory terms, right? One of the girls went to another website called safetotell.org, where you can report cyberbullying. She reported it, Safe to Tell, got a hold of the Arvada police. This young man didn't put his name, he was doing an anonymous thing. So while he's in his room in his computer, talking about what a slut that girl is and typing in an anonymous way, how does he feel? He's the man. How do you think he felt when the Arvada police showed up? Not so good. They traced it. They were able to trace it back to him. Okay? So they do these things, they feel in control, but later. Eating disorders. When you refuse to eat, do you have a sense of control? When you control your diet? Yes. Do you feel in control when they take you to Children's Hospital? And they strip you down and they weigh you before every meal? Do you think you feel in control of that? No. So teenagers are notorious for that. Now, what we're wanting is this phrase. Well, first Aristotle. I forgot Aristotle. Adolescents today are as fickle in their desires as they are vehement in expressing them. That means they change their minds a lot and they get really upset and really are passionate. Okay? Anybody know who said, out of chaos comes a shooting star? Anybody know? Philosopher. It's kind of interesting because he was, I'm blanking on the school, he was really a nihilist. He was a nihilist. Friedrich Nietzsche said, out of chaos comes a shooting star. Now, what we're trying to do in middle school is take all of that angst and direct it into something, focus it into something spectacular. Okay? This year, talking with kids about who do they see doing that, Missy Franklin has been a shoo-in for talking about teenagers who are directing their emotions. Missy Franklin has the same angst that every other teenager has. What is she doing? She swims, and she has fun, and she loves her classmates. Reading about her in her final read a couple weeks ago, I read that amazing story. What a great young lady. Lindsay Vaughn, she just came out in a magazine about how she struggled with severe depression, takes medication for it, has for years. But is she still directing her angst? Yes, hopefully she'll recover from her knee injury, right? So we're constantly looking at who are the role models for them, of teenagers who are using all that energy and they're directing it into success. And it doesn't have to be Hollywood. It could be a kid who gets their bar mitzvah. Do you know how hard it is to get a bar mitzvah? How much you have to study? It's a lot of work. The kid who gets confirmed, the kid who starts a recycling program here in St. Elizabeth, they're directing their angst. The kid who does other volunteer stuff, right? Maybe picks up trash in the city park, right? Those are the kind of things you're wanting your teenager to do, to direct that energy into something successful, not keep doing this spitting around stuff. Make sense? Now, I'm going to get to strategies on how to do that. Real quick, a couple things. The beauty of the teen brain, it's changing, it's making all these connections. They can control that. The more enriched they are, the more experiences you expose them to, the more connections they have. The less they have, the fewer they make. Also, the idea is pruning. So the brain, after it makes all these connections, it then will go back and prune some of them out. If it doesn't feel it needs them, it gets rid of it because it wants to be faster and more efficient. So if you don't use it, you lose it. Okay? So if you're in an environment which isn't stimulating, which isn't really challenging you, somebody in the public system years ago thought that middle school should be a time of social and emotional development, not academic rigor. Well, guess what? That's stupid. Do middle schoolers need to be challenged academically? Yes. If they aren't, they lose it. Language development. We talked about the mylar sheathing of the brain. Once the mylar sheathing is laid down, it's really hard to change the connections. It's like building a house. If you want to change your floor design, when should you change it? While you're drawing it up or while your construction's first started? Is it kind of hard to change it once the building's done? Same with your brain, okay? Myelination makes it harder to change your brain configuration. By age 12 or 13, your language center is myelinated, okay? When should we start doing foreign language? In the middle. It's a lot harder to learn a foreign language later, okay? You want to be getting that foreign language in there sooner. So the longer you wait or the less you do, that brain is going to trim stuff off and not have connections. Okay, now let's go on. First of all, know your student or your child. What kind of marshmallow eater do you have? The kids that eat it right, they need more structure. They need more rules. They need real clear boundaries about how they're going to do things. When they're going out on a date, when they're driving a car, in middle school, some of you have got middle schoolers, maybe you're letting them go to the mall, right? I once talked to the manager at Claire's. On average at Claire's at Park Meadows, twice a day, guess who has to get called? The security guard. And guess who has to handcuff? Some middle school girl, because what she's been doing, shoplifting. Okay? So if you got the marshmallow eater girl, you say, honey, you can go to Claire's with your friend. Now remember, did we ever steal anything? What's going to happen if we do? If I get a phone call, will you be going back to Claire's again? No. Okay? You got a marshmallow eater who likes to go to King Soopers with his buddies. What do they love to take? Candy, right? Gum, candy, constantly getting caught at King Soopers. Impulsive behavior. Those kids need more rules. Second, they need structure. They need a small, safe, secure environment. If you look at what stress does to the brain, when you get stressed, academically, your frontal lobe functioning drops down. So when you're stressed, you're hypervigilant, your frontal lobe function goes down, you can't pay attention to class, your emotions go up. Okay? Guess what happens to creative learning? It goes down. When kids are feeling unsafe in a middle school environment, they're not learning a whole lot. Okay? They need structure. They need consistency. They need those friendly faces every day that are greeting them at the door, helping shepherd them through the middle school process. That's your big thing. They also need after-school programs. We're in an urban area here. If you look at urban statistics, what's the most dangerous times for kids? On the clock, after school, 3 to 6 is the danger time for kids. St. Elizabeth, for their middle school, will have after-school programs. They already have after-school programs, right? Yep. They'll have after-school programs for the middle schoolers, okay? Sports, they got the thing with the golf over here, the kids can play golf. They've got tutoring, or not, well, study hall, right? We've got study hall with a teacher there that can help the students. For a lot of our middle schoolers, study hall is the best thing you could ever do. Because if they get home and they haven't done their homework, what's going to happen? They're going to be watching TV when you show up from home from work. And then how hard is it to get back on your homework? Really hard. Homework ruins a lot of family time. It really does. They need to do it at school with the help of the teacher if they need it. They need to get it done right away with the study. Okay? They need enrichment. And they need that during that 3 to 6 hour as well. Slow down. Speed is your enemy with teenagers. So your middle schooler comes home and says, Mom, I need to get a new lacrosse head. The coach says I have to have a new lacrosse head and a new stick. Well, honey, we're going to the orthodontist, and I got to pick your sister up, and I got to go stop at the grocery store and the dry cleaners. Can we get it tomorrow? What's the kid going to say? No, I have to have it by tomorrow. Okay, we'll stop at Breakaway Sports. You go on to Breakaway Sports. Now, honey, we're in a hurry. Let's get this done. Which stick is that kid going to pick? the most expensive stick he can find. And he's going to say, this is the one the coach would like to have. And you're in a hurry. And you're going to say, are you sure? Could you do that one that's half price? No, the coach said we have to have this one. Okay? What are you probably going to do? You're going to buy it, right? Have you really taught your kid anything about impulse control? No. Okay? You got to slow them down. Make sure you're going slow. Accountability, clear rules and consequences. They need to know that. St. Anne's is a little warning point system. The kids all know the rules. You get a warning point, you get a positive point. Okay? Nice little structure to know. If you get too many warning points, you get scrub club. You come in early in the morning to pick up trash and clean desks. Okay? It's not a bad thing. Some of our ADHD guys love it. They get to move around while they're cleaning. Okay? They need clear rules and consequences. You need to be clear about those at home too. For your middle schooler, do they get to go out with friends on their own? If they're at somebody's house, can they go to the 7-Eleven with that friend without a parent? You need to tell them that ahead of time. If you don't tell them, and later you find out they did it, what are they going to say to you? Well, you didn't tell me I couldn't, right? I had a middle schooler once. I have an office in Littleton, Lutheran church out there. 2 or 3 stories, not as big as this one, but it's pretty high. We were playing capture the flag. We had one group in the back, one group in the front. We're playing capture the flag, running around the church outside, trying to get the flag. All of a sudden, I hear the kids in the front yelling and screaming, yelling, cheater, you're cheating. And I come around, I'm like, what's going on? And one kid said, he came from the roof. Joey. I'm like, what? And little Joey climbed up a gutter, went up this really steep roof, dropped down the other side, dropped down and stole their flag. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he looked at me and said, you didn't tell me I couldn't. I'm like, I never thought I'd have to. Okay, I'm adding that to the list. No, we're going to the roof. Okay? And that's how you have to think with middle schools. You really need to think about it. What are the rules and consequences before we go to get out with the kids? Before we're in the youth group trip to the skating rink or whatever? You really need to figure that out. You need to have the rules for your video games all locked down tight. As your kids get older, they need to know the curfew rules for the next 4 years. They need to know their driver, when do they get to drive, how much insurance do they pay. You've got to lay it out for them. They need a parameter. Kids need a parameter. Social and emotional goals, in my mind, those are just as important as academic goals. For some of your kids, if they're kind of a hothead, you may find that you're saying to them, look, if you want some of these freedoms, you want to be able to go spend the night in somebody's house, you want to be able to drive someday, you need to work on the hotheadedness. If you don't, you're not going to get to do that. Do you want an angry teenager driving a car? No, that is really not a good mix, okay? So you're developing some social goals, some emotional goals for them to continue to work on. And talking about that all the time. Kids love stories. They love to hear stories. Guess what they particularly love to hear about you? About. Stories about you as a teenager, and especially if you failed, if you screwed up. They love to hear about how their parents messed up, okay? That has real meaning. So you're talking social, emotional. You have character values. St. Elizabeth's going to be, I know what St. Anne's has, we've got character, we've got 8 characters that we emphasize for our students. St. Elizabeth's going to have character development. We're going to talk about values, your family values, they're going to talk about your school values, okay? Do you want your middle schoolers to think about honesty? Yeah, you see the statistics on the cheating in colleges and high school and SATs, right? Kids are feeling entitled, like they should be able to cheat so they can get ahead. Is that a value we want? No. Volunteerism. Should all of your families be doing volunteer work? Do you want your kid to do volunteer work? Yes. Will that be a sacred characteristic here? Yes. This is a place of service. This is a school born out of service for others. Okay? You want volunteerism to be emphasized. You want good character qualities emphasized in education and in home. This one I need to change. I just wrote it on today. I didn't put it on there yet. I would change it to earned positive messages. Okay? Middle schoolers, if you go around telling them all the time, oh, you're so smart, Bridget, does that really have any meaning to her? No. Okay? She knows. I'm faking it. She hasn't done anything to earn it. After about age 6, you can give, under 6, you can give all the positives in the world. You're so cute, honey, you're so special, you're so smart, you can do anything. They eat it up. After about 6, guess what? They know they didn't earn it. Okay? Now your messages are positive. You still want to get to the fact that if you're alive and breathing in the family, we love you, we care about you, you're glad in our family. But they also need lots of positives for when they earned really emphasizing success, earning expectations for your middle schoolers. It is not a time just to say, well, he's a middle school brain. You need to have expectations, schoolwork, whatever. And reinforce that in a positive way. You can do lots of fun stuff. To middle schooler guys love their trip to play paintball. They love it. Do they like go-karts? Yeah, that's big time stuff, right? Use all sorts of things to reinforce progress. This one, build insight. Discipline has two purposes. The first purpose is to either stop or start a behavior. Stop bugging your sister, start doing your homework. Okay? So you have consequences for your kid. You're trying to either get them to do stuff or stop doing stuff. The other purpose of discipline is to build insight. Why did I do what I did? How was I feeling? Was I trying to get back at somebody? Was I upset about this? So that if you're more insightful next time around, guess what? Maybe you won't do that behavior. Okay? So when you have a consequence for your kid, I'll give you an example. How many of you have a middle school? Who's got a middle school? Okay? Like, what do you take away from it? So just tell me. The phone. Okay? So he was doing some boy or girl. So maybe I don't know. What should we do for? Sassy mouth. Oh yeah, that's a tough one. Our little 7-year-old can give us some looks where you're like, whoa, that's intense. Like, that's too much. Huh? So she gives you the sassy mouth, right? You say, you lost your phone for 2 days. Now, if she doesn't fuss for the first day, and she talks to you, and says to you, I'm sorry, plus this is why I did it. This is what I was feeling. This is what I should have done and said. And has a heart-to-heart talk with her mom about it. Guess what happens after one day? The phone appears, and she gets it back. If she doesn't apologize, she doesn't talk about it, she fusses when she has the consequence for the 2 days, then guess what happens? Phone's gone for 4 days, okay? So you institute the half double rule. You come talk to me, we figure it out, the consequences got to happen. You don't, you stop. You really trying to promote insight. This is also a great time to talk about risks. What were the risks of that behavior? What should you have been thinking about? Okay? Again, kids are very impulsive, they're emotionally driven. I was doing a talk with our 8th graders. I have an article that I actually met this young girl's aunt. She was at one of my talks. She was up at Wheat Ridge High School about 3 years ago. Beautiful 18-year-old girl. Went to a party. And I tell the story, I'll tell you the story. So she goes, it's in a small house. There's no adults. 200 or 300 kids in a fairly small house. With no adults. There's drug and alcohol. It's after midnight, about 1 in the morning. There's some party crashers show up. Start some fights with the guys out front. The party crashers are leaving. The kid takes out a pistol. They've still never caught the kid. One of the kids, they don't know who did it, shoots a gun at the guys in front, misses the boys, bullet goes through the plate glass, the window hits that girl right in the head. Kills her instantly. A month or two before graduation. Do you remember it? The aunt lives up in Evergreen. I was talking to Evergreen Montessori, just telling the story. This woman's bawling in the sea. She came up to me afterwards. She said, "Thank you for telling my niece's story. She was a beautiful girl. We still don't know who did it. I can't talk about it. And kids need to understand risk." Okay? Now, with the 8th graders, then we evaluate what's the risk that the girls should have been thinking about. What were the risk factors in that story? Just say that. Were there adults? No adults. Hundreds of kids in a small house. Drugs and alcohol. Okay? Party crashers. Okay? Think of if you're an insurance agent, what do they think about you? What's the bewitching hour? 12 o'clock. After midnight. The only stuff that happens is bad stuff. Right? That's when the drunks run the road and stuff, right? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay? This little, beautiful 8th grade girl says, "Mr. Knippenberg, if I'm at a party having fun, why would I think of that?" And I said, "Exactly. That's what we're talking about now. Well, we can sit here and have an intellectual discussion about it. So that someday when you're at one of those parties, maybe a light will go off. And you'll go, I should call my mom. I should go home. I need to leave. I need to get out of this situation. I need to respect my creepy gut feelings. I need to get out of here." Okay? But that takes discussion with you. So that half double was a great time to talk about risk. What's going on? Have that nice talk. They get the phone back. Half the time. Connecting emotionally. You can never do enough of that. Families with rituals, things you do over and over every week. When I was a kid, Sunday night we watched Bonanza. Some of you are old enough to remember Bonanza, some of you aren't. We had grilled cheese and tomato soup, and then we played cards every Sunday night, 50 years. Okay, that's a ritual. That's what we're doing every night. The world can be falling apart. It was the 60s, the hippies and everything. My brother was a hippie. The world can be falling apart. We still play cards on Sunday night. Do your kids need that? Yes, they need to know that at home there are going to be times when no matter, even if you've been fighting and having a hard time at homework, you're going to be doing some activities together. You're going to have rituals. Research on alcoholic families that had rituals versus ones who didn't. Those kids survived that alcoholic family much better than families that were just chaos. Okay? So you need rituals. Adventure, you're going to see a green flyer on your way out over there. I got some stuff from my practice, group brochures, I got stuff about practice, when you're testing, sports performance, all sorts of stuff. I also started a site, my son runs it now, adventuredad.org. It's adventures for dads with their kids. And you can go on the website, we got everything in there. Alex has a great one on how to start a campfire, how to make a campfire, to the best kinds of flashlights, all sorts of stuff. Adventures we've gone on, places to go, all sorts of things. Now you've got a contest for like a place in Colorado, right? Name the place in Colorado, it's a little contest. So doing adventures with your kids, getting out and doing stuff. Volunteerism, your family should be doing some things. We're going to talk in character development. I started a program at my church, how many years? 27? Is it 27 now? 27 years ago. For chronic mentally ill adults, mental health consumers. Most of them live in Knippenberg. Our church is out on South Colorado Boulevard, about Isla. And we have a monthly dinner program. Last time we did a talent show. And everybody got to perform, got $5 gift cards. Alex started helping when he was 3 months old. He started coming 3 months old. He has never said to me, never once, what's wrong with those people? To him, who were those people? Friends. He was serving them. I saw him become a leader, leading the bingo and all sorts of stuff. A simple thing we do once a month has turned into an amazing blessing for our family and for the other families who help. And about 3 years ago, we got an award, the SUI Award for Volunteer of the Year for Denver. And Mayor Hickenlooper, I got a medal and a dinner, and it was pretty cool. And my kid was there with me the whole time. So doing stuff as a family, getting out and volunteer, sharing those things emotionally, biting your tongue. The sign of a good parent of a teenager is the teeth mark in their tongue. Okay? The Bible says, when it comes to parenting, listen lots, talk little, and be slow to anger. That's really true with those stories. They get emotional really fast. It doesn't help if you get emotional. If you are going to get emotional, you're going to do the big thing, it should be what's called prudent. It really needs to be the right time. If you do it all the time, does it have any meaning? None. If your old man flips out once a year, does that have any meaning? You betcha. Okay? I saw my dad cry once. Do you think I remember that? You betcha. It was Dad's funeral. Those are the times you remember the emotions of your parents, not if it's every day. So biding your tongue a lot, letting them solve their problems. Let them solve their problems, you biding your tongue. Limit electronics. We talked about the spikes in dopamine levels. The other thing that happens with your brain when it's doing that the game stuff, your memory is simply committed to memorizing the patterns in that machine, in the game. It is not doing creative thinking. Creative thinking is when you're taking thoughts from different areas of your brain and blending them together. It's sort of like social studies, history. You're thinking these deep thoughts. For about 2 hours after you play video games, your memory is dedicated to just basic memorization of patterns. Their cortisol levels are high. Your brain does not do creative thinking. So you cannot do calculus or math stuff after playing. Yes?
And how long does it take to kind of raise those dopamine levels?
It's about 2 hours to get back to normal. So after you've done it, it's worn off. It takes about 2 hours to get back into the range.
How long to raise it?
Oh, you can spike your. If you told me right now I just won the lottery, guess what happened to my dopamine levels? It skyrocketed. It's instantaneous. Guess what sex does to your dopamine levels? It increases it. Okay? So dopamine is associated with pleasure. So is that fun? If it wasn't fun, would people have children? No, we wouldn't have kids anymore. We'd all go extinct because the children would stay home with their parents until they were 80 and done. So it's supposed to be fun. God made it fun. And it spikes your dopamine levels. If I go up to Blackhawk with my brother, excitement of playing, and when I hit the wind, guess what happens to my dopamine levels? When I get that 3 of a cup, they juice up. That's called the dopamine juice. And it's instantaneous. You just go like that. Right? I get in the car, the kid pulls up and says, hey, Craig, jump in, we're all going out for pizza. What happened to my dopamine levels? They spiked way up. I jump in the back, there's no seat belts. But my dopamine levels are so high, what do? I get in. Freshman in Rockville High School, about a year before Alex went there, did the same thing. A car pulled out of Rockville High School, Dry Creek, I think it was, rolled over in the ditch, that kid was killed. 14 years old. Should have gotten in that car. But his dopamine levels spiked. And he was so excited to be invited to go out. That's the answer. So, eliminating electronics. Caring for you, your front lobe, the big 4, water, sleep, exercise, and nutrition. We talked about exercise, we'll slide on that. The more you exercise, the better you think. Sleep, your middle schooler, they need 10 hours of sleep. They're probably not getting it. You know, you're hoping 8 or 9. Your high schoolers need 10 hours, but they're getting like 6 or 7. It's amazing the amount of homework they have. They really need sleep. Sleep really helps the brain consolidate everything. Good nutrition, best thing you can eat in the morning and snack time. Either high grain, whole grains, complex carbs, or protein. Those are 2 best things. Old-fashioned oatmeal, that's going to really, it's going to make glucose, it's going to burn the longest, and protein. Those are going to last the longest. You give your kid a donut, how long does that last in your brain? Oh, about 20 minutes, and then guess what happens? You start to fall asleep, okay? So that's what we're going to emphasize for nutrition. And lots of water. First sign, when you get a headache right here, frontal lobe headache, you're dehydrated. First thing you do when you get a headache here is drink lots of water. Take care. Okay, last thing. This is on the slide. In conclusion, wow, I hit it within like 3 minutes. That's pretty good. Not bad. I put a copy of the 40 assets. That's from a group at the University of Minnesota. You look at teen resiliency. Okay? How do you keep teen? How do you help them be resilient? And it's got 40 things internally and 40 external qualities. Take it home, look at it, read it over. Nice guidelines for parents for your kids, including how many extracurricular activities they should have, how many hours they should work at the working job. One of the key internal things is having teenagers that know when to ask for help, and they feel they can go to adults. Teenagers who feel they can go to adults and get help, they survive much better than other kids. When your kid is in a school where they feel safe and secure, they're connected with adults, like my son was with Mr. Dicker, he has somebody he can go to for help, right? When you look at, I was at one of my offices down the street from Columbine High School. I worked with those kids for months and months and months. Tremendous toll. One of the things I've been interested in is how do we prevent these sorts of things happening? The research looks at in cases where they've prevented tragedies, shootings happening in schools, 90% of the time it was because a student told one of the adults. They went to an adult and said, I'm worried about that kid. That kid's been making threats. I'm worried about my friend might want to commit suicide. They sent a Facebook post and said they want to kill themselves. Okay? At St. Anne's, I've given several positive points over the years to kids who've called me up and stuff worried about that. Now, one year I had a mom call me up and she said, my son said, I told my son I'm a little worried about his classmate. I think he's getting bullied and he seems depressed. And my son said he is. And I said, well, thank you very much. I'll check into it. I did a little research, talked to some of the teachers, called the mom back up, and he said, you're right, he is getting bullied. Unfortunately, it's your son who's doing it. What I loved was the response I got from her, which was, thank you very much for telling me, I'll take care of it. Okay? Nice, safe community. We want our kids to be able to come to adults and talk to them. Interesting enough, the last part of that research, of the 90%, the majority of the students who told were females. Okay? Females, again, they're 2 years ahead. They generally make better decisions. But that's the kind of community we want for our kids. Thanks for coming out tonight hearing this, and also, most importantly, supporting St. Elizabeth's a fabulous school. And we hope you'll Thank you very much.